Conservatives candidate for Lincoln, Karl McCartney, spoke to the Linc's Tom Farmery to explain plans and policies for the upcoming general election. I started by asking him about the Tories' pledge to increase the inheritance tax threshold to £1 million, which they believe will help millions of people. Yet how many would actually be helped?
We'd like to get back towards a savings culture. Unfortunately, at the moment, not only do you get taxed on the whatever monies you earn during your life, you also get taxed on your savings. And then what this Labour government's put in place is the fact that when you die, you also get taxed, or your inheritors do. And I think the 20,000 death tax proposed by the Labour government was seen for exactly that. It was something that wasn't a nice thing to have put in place. And I think by having the £1 million band, it means that anybody below that will not be paying inheritance tax. And it brings forward our savings culture. And I think that's something that needs to be replaced in this culture, in this country. Because unfortunately, at this point in time, people are looking at the way things are and saying, well, why should I save? And I think in the past, people were told that saving was a good thing to do, and it is, and we should save for our future and for our long retirement. But at the moment, the incentive isn't there because you think, well, hold on, the government's going to take it off us again, and I don't think that's what people would want. The 900,000 is actually made up by youngsters who are not in training, not in education, not in employment. And it's not that they've been thrown on the scrap heap, and they certainly shouldn't have been, but this Labour government's got a woeful record in the fact that that number has risen under the last 13 years. Now, it's something the Conservatives are very aware of, that actually the drivers of the economy are small businesses, and lots of young people have entrepreneurial skills. I've worked as a Prince's Youth Business Trust Advisor in the past, and I know that young people have a great get-up-and-go ethic, and I think those people shouldn't be turned away from doing that. And I think those 900,000, I think the Conservative Party has said there'll be 100,000 extra places a year on apprenticeships, and that's something that, university's not for everybody. Further education isn't perhaps the answer for everybody as they approach the 16 or 18-year-old threshold. And I think apprenticeships can help very much with small businesses and larger businesses in providing youngsters who are going to have a fruitful working life. Graduates are coming out from obviously their degree and finding that there aren't the jobs there for them to even apply for, never mind to actually succeed in getting. And I think the Conservatives obviously want to get the economy back on track, and it's something that this Labour government claimed that boom and bust was ended, and Gordon Brown has taken us into the deepest recession this country's ever seen. It's something that has to be tackled, and it's something the Conservative Party have shown by their policies that were in the manifesto yesterday, and also previously when we talk about national insurance, that the Conservative Party is the one party that's willing to take action now that's going to make sure that there are jobs there. We're going to have for new businesses a 2-year holiday for the first 10 employees from national insurance. I think that's a great release for employees who are taking on people. I think with Park and Ride, it needs to be a holistic system for Lincoln. You can't just have it, by bit part, i.e. just one node, if you like, for transport. There needs to be 3 or 4 locations for Park and Ride, and then there needs, in my mind, to be probably 6 or 8 dedicated different routes. And I take the example of Exeter, which, when I was 16, 17, I spent a couple of summers in Exeter. They have very small, and it's like minibus-sized buses. They're all painted a different colour. You know which route that bus is on. They all interlink. And what Lincoln needs and should have, and would, if you like, it would alleviate both the transport congestion and also the parking problems that the city has. If there were 4 areas around the outskirts of the city where people could park their car and know that they could catch the bus that calls at that car park and it goes into the central city and it interlinks with all the other different coloured bus routes, that they're regular, they have to be sort of every 10-15 minutes perhaps, but they know that they can go from any one of those 4 places on the outskirts to anywhere in the city, and they can walk perhaps the last 100 yards, that's the way forward. And I think it has to be put in place for 18 months, it has to be fully funded. There is no way that I think Park and Ride can happen that isn't A, holistic, and B, isn't funded and in place for 18 months. Because if something's put in place with just one Park and Ride option, and it's there for 6 months, it will fail, and that's not what Lincoln needs. We need to take the examples. I've mentioned Exeter. I know that Glasgow's got a very good Park and Ride system, and I think Lincoln needs to look outside. We're 20, 30 years behind, and that's how long I'm told Park and Ride has been talked about in Lincoln. Well, it's not necessarily spending cuts. What the Conservatives are looking at is waste. Now, the Labour government of the day have already had people who have identified £11 billion worth of saving. but they're not willing to make those changes this year. They're going to let it go for another year. The Conservative Party said, if we are lucky enough to be voted in government on the 7th of May, we'll be looking at that wastage and we'll be cutting it. That's £11 billion. That's an awful lot of money. Now, for the Labour Party to say, well, actually, yeah, we're going to leave that in place for a year. Why waste £11 billion for a year? The Conservative Party, the positive party, who are looking at making positive changes now to improve all of our futures. There's different ways of actually measuring that crime. I think one of the things that we'd say for the Labour Party is that, unfortunately, they've taken the decision that people who've been sent to jail, who've obviously broken laws, have been let out early. 80,000 prisoners let out early is not the way forward. There's no deterrent there. And I think one of the things the Conservative Party have said is that it's about time that the victims are looked after rather than the perpetrators of crime.